back here again today to help us think about inclusion and teaching kids with special needs and teaching all needs in a virtual environment, because it's going to be a challenge this year. So Leah, thank you. Welcome.
I want to say it's a real honor to be presenting in front of all of you amazing educators. A lot of times I'm just like, you have so much to offer. It's just you, all of us together discussing and sharing. That's really how we're going to make this year work. All of us together. Everyone has so many great ideas, and educators think it's doing that. There's not a city in the world that I know of that does this for educators. So thank you for doing that, Zippy. That was really, really amazing. And we're going to start. I'm going to share the screen. If you have any questions, I guess what we could do is you can maybe put it in the chat, and Zippy, if you can read the chat and see if anyone has questions.
Yep. And
we'll take pauses in between if anyone has questions, but right at the end, that's when we'll open it to everyone. Okay? Okay. Okay, so I hope everyone could see this. And we're gonna make it, I'm gonna make it a little smaller, that way everyone could see. Okay, so we're gonna talk today about educating and reaching every child virtually. And I know this is a scary time now, because it's just like, how do I reach a child if I'm not even there, if I'm not present, if I'm not standing in front of the child, and how can I really get through and really engage with that child? So we're going to talk about all of this. There's much more to just the one child, right? There's a whole bigger picture. So we're going to backtrack a little bit, and then we're going to zero in. So first of all, again, you are all amazing, and I think we need to tell ourselves that every single day when you look in the mirror and say I am amazing, because this is everybody, like the whole world was shaken in March and continuing on, and it was the teachers that just were like, okay, we got to get this happening, let's go. And everything closed down, but schools remained open virtually, but everyone has been doing their utmost. So, you know, you're gonna go online and see videos of different educators and different ideas that everybody has, but I want you to know that you are incredible, and we really have to tell ourselves that and validate that we are amazing and that we're all doing our very best. So please know that. Okay, so firstly, a lot of teachers told me, you know, while I was doing research for this, specifically for this workshop, because again, we're in new waters, definitely. A lot of teachers told me, well, I don't have kids with disabilities. I teach in a Hebrew school, or I teach in a Sunday school, or in any really a day school. Most of my kids are pretty typical kids. So just so we all know that 1 out of 5 people have a diagnosed disability in America. So the idea of, if you have a general ed class, if you're teaching more than 5 students, you probably have a student with a diagnosed disability. And I'm sure many of you recognize those students, or you can think of students from last year that had something, whether we knew it or not. Some students have an IEP right away. They get diagnosed at an early age. Some students don't get diagnosed at an early age, and it comes out later on. But whether a child has an IEP or a diagnosis, or if they have nothing and we don't know anything about them, at the end of the day, every great educator is a special educator, because we are focusing on every single child and making sure that every child individually, that their needs are met. So again, yes, 1 in every 5 students have a diagnosed disability, but at the same time, every single child is, of course, so special. And so therefore, it's so important to think about that when we're planning our year. So far, does anyone
Leah,
have a question?
Jen wanted to know if you knew if that statistic is the same in Jewish education or not, or among Jewish kids.
So, okay, so that's a very good question, especially in Milwaukee. You know, it's a smaller community, and when we came here, I don't know if everyone sees each other now. Do you see each other? Okay.
Depends how they have their slides set up. How they have it depends how they have their screen set up. They can set it up so they can see everybody or not.
Okay, so hopefully everyone can, but it's a very good question. That was actually the 1 out of 5 students was in 2019. Since then, there were many studies that showing that 1 out of 4 students have a diagnosed disability because they're adding in the mental health aspect to it. So in terms of the Jewish community, when we moved here 4 years ago, we were also told there's not so many adults or children with disabilities, and that statistic is not, it's not just a statistic, it's the real deal. So to say that we don't know of people who have disabilities, it's probably because those disabilities we can't see, but they're definitely there. So yes, in the Jewish community as well, again, there are different studies, some say 1 in 4 and some say 1 in 5. But if you add in the mental health aspect of it for, that emotional part to it, especially now in COVID, it's definitely a real number. You can look through, you could look at your students as a whole and see if you know what I'm talking about, if you've seen it come up. Sometimes they're very small, sometimes they're great. But the truth is that all of us have something that we're struggling with. So whether you have 5 students or you have 20 students or 1 student, again, every student is special. But yes, in the Jewish community, that statistic is as well. I would love to do some research on the Milwaukee community just because it's interesting to see if there's definitely more invisible disabilities in our community than visible. Like there's not so many kids with cerebral palsy in the Jewish Milwaukee community, right? But there are a lot more with ADHD. So there is a lot more. So we're actually let's move to the next slide and we're gonna see about the children that we're talking about. Again, I hope that the screen you can see. Okay, so let's go over here. These are the children that we're talking about. Children that are in general ed settings, which is a lot of you are general ed teachers, and you'll have children who are in your classroom that have ADHD, that have a language-based learning disability or a nonverbal learning disability. So, and you'll see it will come out in social challenges with memory. So there might be, you might not, well, there's no actual paper that says anything, but there's definitely something going on. And that you'll definitely see. Kids on the autism spectrum and kids with emotional disorders. Like I said, the mental health aspect that's coming in now. So you'll have different children, different students like this in your classroom. Just by a raise of hands, and I'll make the screen bigger again. Do any of you have students like this in your classroom that you know of? You can raise your hand if you have someone like that. Okay, excellent. I mean, excellent, it's wonderful. That means your classrooms are inclusive and included for everyone. So that's wonderful. If you don't have students like that, or you think that you don't, I'm telling you, you do. So it's just about, maybe you don't have the paper, maybe they were not diagnosed, but you definitely have a child in this aspect. And the truth is all of us have a little bit of something there too. As teachers, I'm sure, as parents, we all have something. So this is really good for all of us to know about and to be able to think about, again, while we're planning for next year. I mean, well, for this year.
Yeah, Leah, one of the things Jen pointed out is that when it comes to Sunday school and Hebrew school, a lot of parents don't disclose learning issues. They somehow think that the teachers won't notice, or it doesn't really count when they're in Hebrew school, so they don't say anything. So that's an additional challenge to figuring the puzzle out.
That is definitely a good point, and I'm sure any Hebrew school or Sunday school teacher here will say that as well. Also, and this is also more controversial, but a lot of parents who send their children to supplementary schools they don't medicate their child. They'll medicate their child if their child needs it in a public school setting or in day school. But once they're going to school or programs afterwards or on Sundays, they'll be like, well, I'd rather not medicate, of course. So they don't. And then the teachers have a child and they don't know why the child is acting this way. And they also, again, they won't disclose it, or they're not medicated. So they have the child beautifully, naturally, as he should be. So, we get this and we're like, what should we do? Right. So that's why we have to plan, and it's going to be all good. It's going to be wonderful. Okay. So as educators, we love to plan, right? We all love it. We have a schedule in the beginning. I know I'm like this, and the whole summer I'm planning, and I love it. I get my charts out, I get my calendar spread out, and I'm focusing on this area, I'm focusing on this area, and then boom, we get this pandemic, and it is so hard to plan when we don't know what we're planning for. And yes, that's true. It is so hard to plan, but we don't have to plan the whole world, because that's not our problem. We are going to focus on what we know is best, what we know as educators. So let's start with step one, get ready. Okay, so firstly, everything is top down, everything. So we really set the tone. We have, again, speaking to different parents and educators, I'm sure you've all had this interactions with parents who are just so overwhelmed. And you have parents who have children, let's say with ADHD or autism or learning disabilities. And as it is, COVID is so stressful and so anxiety provoking. And then add in the part that their child has a disability or is challenged in different ways. It's just so much more stressful. So you have parents who are just exhausted. And I don't know if you are on, I'm sure all of you are on Facebook and different groups and reading the comments that parents are saying. And really, you know, again, the parents set the tone in their home. And there's a lot of just exhaustion and worry. So when we come as teachers, we're really partnering with those parents, right? And we're creating that tone. So really, we have to, inside of us, we are looking for that positive and finding positivity within the pandemic. I'm just gonna, is that better? Can everyone read now? Okay, so we really need to find it. And I don't mean just to like pretend, oh yes, everything's wonderful. I mean, really look for the positivity, because this year, I mean, we are on the brink of something amazing in terms of technology and education. The fact that we are able to do this is mind blowing. And when we really think about it, and maybe we need to meditate, maybe we need to go for walks and just pray, anything that we need to do to make ourselves positive in our minds and in our hearts and in our souls, because that will come across to the students and come across to the parents as well. You know, when we tell the parents, it's going to be a wonderful year, you'll see. That makes the parents feel like, okay, my child's in good hands. I might be losing it, but I know my child is in good hands. And so really, when we're talking to the parents, or when we're really meaning it. So that's number one, everything is top down. So now let's talk about setting ourselves up for success. So, okay, I know we're going to be talking about the students in a minute, but when we're not well, when we're going crazy, okay, everything else kind of trickles down again, because everything is top down. So it's really important to make sure we set up a system for ourselves as educators, as people, as parents. So first of all, this is not March through June anymore. We're not trying to tread in water, okay? We're setting ourselves up, let's say, for the whole year to be like this. I mean, it might be, and hopefully it will not, but let's say it is like this for the whole year, right? So how can we set up a structure for ourselves that we'll be able to do this, okay? That'll be long-term and not short-term. I'm gonna try to do everything I can and then break down. So, and the truth is, between March and June, a lot of us were just trying our hardest and doing the best that we could, but is it sustainable? So let's figure that out. So first of all, self-care is so important. It's so important. Create a time for ourselves that we're able to, again, meditate, pray, go for a jog, do something that we enjoy doing, and do something that calms us and relaxes us. It's so important. Also, we make schedules for our students all the time, but we really need to make a schedule for ourselves, for our personal families, while we're teaching. Okay, so we need to have a plan. Maybe it's hard for you with dinners. I know for me, I can't plan dinners. I'm working all day, I'm with the kids, there's no dinners, right? But is that sustainable? Of course not, right? So I need to make a plan that somehow we'll know that we'll have a time when we go shopping and a time for menus. I mean, again, these are working parents situations that we always have, but when we're working from home, it gets just so much more intensified. So again, eat, drink, caffeinate, okay? When we're setting up a space to work, to teach, we're setting up a comfortable place near with good internet, if you can, good outlets nearby. Again, we're dressing for work. And I know, like, we all say, you know, dress, and then you don't have to wear pants, but it really is, it's inside. It's dressing up for you, for yourself, to say, I'm ready for work. This is going to be an amazing day. Okay. Talk to colleagues, you know, discuss it, just share, really feel there's a community, and we have to be a community with educators because we're all dealing with this at the same time. And try to schedule breaks for yourself. By the way, when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself also. I know how hard it is to do all these things, but it's so important, so important. So this is for all educators and for parents, when you're educators, when you're speaking to parents. All right, we want to be there for them. Again, we're partners with them. So we want to be there as a support for you. Please take time for yourself, parents. Please take time for yourself. Figure out a system that you will have some time for yourself so that you can then be able to give to others. Everyone got that, right? We're good? Okay, I can't see everyone's faces, but okay. Okay, so this is just a sample of someone created them, Mr. Cohen, he created himself a schedule for himself. He doesn't have times here, but it's just more of figuring out a schedule for himself so that he's able to then be successful and teach others. So just an AM routine, lunch, and a PM routine. We need to create that for ourselves, hang it up on the wall if that helps you, but definitely have some sort of structure for ourselves. Okay, now we're gonna move on. Get set, planning. Okay, again, we don't know what will be in the world, and but we know what works. We know that education is something that everyone's going to need all the time. So yes, the world might be swirling around us, but our goal is to create leaders, to create future leaders for the world. And that's what we're gonna do. So we analyze our curriculum and we create a plan for every individual child. Now that's kind of hard to do when we don't know our students. Many of you may not know your students. You might be getting incoming students that you don't know. So we'll talk about that, about new students, but the idea is to make a plan. Again, summers for planning. Well, we are making a different type of plan. So we're planning for ourselves, we're planning for our classroom as a whole, looking at the curriculum, then we're planning for our students, and then we're planning for our students' families. Okay, so again, parents being overwhelmed, they may just, there is that overwhelmness that families have, and since the student is working from home, we're really working with those parents much more. Our relationship is definitely stronger than it is on a regular basis in regular school. So we definitely want to have a plan for those parents as well. Okay, so let's start. Consistency. Consistent in a world of chaos, everyone needs consistency. We're all craving it as teachers, but certainly as students, and certainly as students with disabilities, they need the consistency to know and to feel secure of what's happening next. Am I going too fast? All good? Okay, let me know if I am. Okay, so firstly, thank you. Okay, so firstly, I'm gonna put this up here. Consistent timing and schedule. That's very, very important to create that consistent schedule. Keep the schedule consistent and short with a pattern. The students know, right? They take a brain break, they learn a lesson, they do an activity, have a discussion, and then a brain break as well. We're keeping it short, we're keeping it consistent in everything we do. Next is to send out the daily schedule at the same time every day. Okay, that was something that we, many parents had that complaint of saying that the schedules came at different times. I didn't know what was happening when. And again, with parents, they're very overwhelmed. So you do have that aspect, and some things you're like, I'm doing my best, and parents feel like, well, I'm getting the schedule at a different time, and they'll be upset about that, but we, again, like we said, we're not taking it personally. We're just trying to make it proper, do it right. This past summer, we had virtual schedules going on every single day. And so we would post it and send it out to parents every day. And we tried to keep it consistent, but it was really hard because sometimes things came up and we weren't able to send it out always. And some parents didn't want the whole week schedule. They wanted every day. So I figured out a way that you can, on Gmail, and I'm sure you all probably know this, I just figured it out, that you can schedule your emails. So I planned in the beginning of the week, the whole week's schedule, and planned an email to be sent out every morning at a certain time. And that way I didn't have to worry about it every single morning, but the parents got it every single morning at the right time. So that was super helpful. And it was something I didn't have to worry about.
Leah, we've got another question.
Sure.
She said, in a regular classroom, I post the daily schedule and refer back to it all session. Do you have a suggestion for the Zoom classroom? when you can't keep the same thing posted the whole class session?
Okay, well, we'll get to that. Thank you. That's a good question. Definitely a good question. It's what platform should we share it on, right? Okay, thank you. So definitely keeping the schedules, the schedules that we have, the visual schedules that we have, which is the next one, visual schedules for students and parents. So the parents and students are knowing what's happening. They are anticipating what's going on. They're excited about it. But again, the schedule should be sent out the same, either once a week for the whole week. But if you're doing every day, then again, the same time every day. And again, on the same platform, which we'll talk about. Next is to prepare and ensure that your students have material beforehand. So we've had this a few times. We've had students that, again, with ADHD or learning disabilities, or honestly, any typical child that is starting a Zoom class and the teacher says, okay, open your books, and they say, oh, I don't have a pencil, and there's a meltdown, and then that's it. The whole day is done because that child just didn't have all their stuff and feels overwhelmed, and the rest of the day they're just not interested. So we do have that. I've seen that firsthand. Some of my children, and definitely some students with disabilities, that felt just this anxiety. And again, when you have overwhelmed parents, the parents are just like, I can't fight with my child right now, so I'm just gonna let it be. So we definitely have that. So definitely make sure that you're giving your child in the beginning of the lesson, let's say the lesson starts at 9 o'clock. So from 9 to 9:05, 9 o'clock, you go over what is needed for the lesson. And then you make sure to give the time for the students to go get their supplies, whatever is needed. Okay, so that way they feel like they got this and they can start their day on a good note. Okay, so, and this is talking about with communication, where to put the Zoom. So there's so many different platforms, and every different schools are using different platforms. So I don't want to take away what any of the schools are doing. Whatever platform it is, it doesn't matter, but it should all be on the same platform. So that's for sure. Whatever you're using, it should all be in the same area. With communication for students. So first of all, we're keeping the instructions short and consistent. And they know the expectations, and they're excited about it. They know their expectations, and they're excited to be challenged to do it, right? But if they don't know, then it's very vague, and because us as educators, we feel bad. We know the child's having a hard day or whatever. A hard day we'll talk about, but let's say just in general, this whole virtual learning is so hard. So if you could do it, great, and if you can't, don't worry. And I know I do this a lot. I say, if you can't, it's fine. And then they don't know what their expectation is. Like, what do you want from me? Just tell me, and then we'll see if I could do it. So again, keeping instruction short, to the point, and knowing exactly what they have to do. That's very important. All materials should be on the same platform. So to be the educator that asked about that, people use Google Slides, Google Classroom. There's so many different ones, and later on I'll show you all the different technology that's out there. But the truth is, there's whatever your school is doing, you could keep going with that, unless your school is not doing anything specific and you're looking for something new. Google Slide and Google Classroom is amazing. I think
the question was how to keep it up there. So if you have a whole slideshow going like you have right now, you could have put up the schedule at the beginning, but it's not there to refer to every slide. I mean, would you suggest that at the bottom corner of every slide, it has the schedule to refer back to, or that they put it in the chat, or do you think that they don't need to see the schedule the entire time?
I think it depends how long your lesson is. If you're teaching the whole day, then it would be great to have a review of what the schedule could be. So for example, if you have the schedule as a chart and you have highlighted the morning lesson, then when you're ready for the next lesson, you would highlight the next subject. Okay, the same chart, but the highlight is on the next thing. And this is what we're doing now. Also depends on the age of your child, of the students that you're working with. But if you're working with, let's say, school-age children, that would be amazing. In the slide, you just duplicate the slide to when you're ready to go on to the next part of your lesson. I think that would be amazing, a great reinforcer. And so they know, okay, now we're doing this, now we're doing that. But they also see what's going on the whole day. Is that helpful? Okay, so, but definitely to keep it all, I want to tell you that there was a student that was getting communications from different ways, whether it was emails, and then there's different apps, there's lots of different, there's Boomerang, and there's Boom Cards, and there's Padlet, and there's, we'll talk about them soon, a Dojo, but there was a lot of different ways of communication, and some students were getting alerts and highlights and just different oh, if you want to do math, go there. If you want to do reading, go there. And then an alert that, okay, now it's time for spelling. And it was just very discombobulating, very. So again, to keep everything on the same platform is really important. This is the schedule of today. Here are the links, and the links are all in the schedule. So a child who is able to do it on their own, they can just click the links. But a child who needs their parent doesn't have to go to 10 different places to find to find whatever they're looking for. It's all there. And that's been really, really helpful to keep everything in one place. And then again, review the schedule and what's needed in the beginning of every class so that the students know what to expect and know what's happening. For parents, communication should be on the same platform. I mean, so many parents got phone calls, WhatsApps, emails, texts. And it could be because the parent wasn't responding, so the teacher was trying different ways of communicating with the parents, which very much happens. But sometimes, again, when parents are overwhelmed, they're getting too many communications. So the best thing to do is to speak to every parent. You could even do that now in the beginning of school, before school starts. How would you like me to communicate with you? Some parents have a specific way. They're like, oh, just call me or just text. I don't want to do anything else. And some parents they're happy with whatever you want to have, whatever route you want. They just want it to be one route. Okay, so I know for myself as a working mom with my 4 kids at home, trying to coordinate their schedules, sometimes they missed some classes, and I had teachers call and be like, is everything okay? And when I was doing great and calm and they called, I was so touched. Oh my gosh, someone's calling and checking in on us. They noticed that one child wasn't there. That's so nice. But I know that when I was overwhelmed or when there was 5 things going on and a teacher called, I was like, oh no, I have to explain myself. Why my child wasn't there, So again, that with parents, it's kind of like, you don't really know. It's hit or miss on what's going on in their homes. But definitely ask them now before, we wanted to be preemptive, right? So we want to speak to them now and say, what's the best way of communication? This is what we're doing. We're emailing parents once a week or every morning. And we're doing check-ins with parents once a week, so just saying, what would you like? And then this is what we're doing, but what would you like? And that's really important for parents to know what's going on and they're able to feel they have a choice. And then they also expect, I expect a phone call every Thursday because the teacher told me that we're going to discuss every Thursday or every other Thursday, for example. Whereas when you get phone calls during the day and you're running around doing things, it can be very confusing. So with students and parents, consistent communication in the same platform, trying the same time. Again, life happens, things are crazy, but to try to plan that way is really helpful. And again, calling them beforehand is great. Sometimes, and this is going back to mental health, but sometimes you might see a student who's struggling. You might hear some yelling or stuff going on in the background. You might hear more than that might happen. Definitely reaching out to the parent and just saying how are things going? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? It's important. We don't want to be pushy, but sometimes parents are just they just need to cry to someone. And sometimes they'll cry to you. Sometimes they'll yell at you, but that's okay because again, they need to just get out whatever they're going through. And they definitely will hang up feeling much better because you care. Sometimes you might say, I'm here for you, you call me, we don't want to be intrusive. But again, it's important to check in and give that personal touch, aside for the professional education stuff, but also that personal stuff. Are you okay? Okay, any questions so far? Okay, we'll move on. Okay. Next, we talk about subjects and materials. So in a typical classroom, there's a lot of different subjects that we're focusing on. There's reading and writing and math, but there's also science and history and, how the world works. Those are all very important subjects. And every child should have the whole, everything, home economics, art. We should have everything. A child deserves to have everything. But some children can get overwhelmed from all the material and all the subjects. So after getting to know your students, and if you see that a student is feeling overwhelmed, again, we're going to just cut down on what that child actually needs. in order to graduate to the next level, wherever he is or wherever she is. Okay, so we might, let's say you have a Sunday school and you're learning about Hanukkah and you're learning all different amazing things about Hanukkah, but if the child could get very overwhelmed from that, from all the details. So again, we try to keep it concise. What's the most important about this subject? And that's what I'm going to focus on. And then everything else is extra and wonderful and supplementary, but it's not what you're going to be graded on, or it's not what we're going to focus on. Again, with the clear expectations, setting those clear expectations that this is what we need to know and this is what we'd like you to know, right? So all of that extra. And very important to cover important subjects in the morning if you can. Again, that's when the students are the most fresh. I had a child who had reading at 2 o'clock. And by 2 o'clock, she was just so done. And I wanted her to learn how to, reading is so important, but by 2 o'clock, it was just, she didn't want to join the Zoom and we would fight about it. And it was really, and then I would see in the morning, she'd just be fresh and excited. And then speaking to other parents as well, again, everyone's saying, well, the morning works, the afternoon is harder. So if you're an educator in the afternoon, then we'll talk about different things that you could do to move and make the child wake up, like as if it's the morning, but definitely if you can focus on those important subjects in the morning. Did you have a question, Sippy? Okay, less is way more. So this is just more of like in conclusion. So focus on the vital material, okay? And then, you know what, this is a little bit mixed up order, but ask the parents how he or she would appreciate engagement. Not necessarily does the parent want to get 5 different messages or pictures or texts or calls. All right, so we're going to, again, less is more in this aspect of reaching out. Reach out, definitely, but again, we keep it consistent and concise. Creating small breakout rooms is really great. Does anyone here know how to do that? If you want to raise your hand. Okay, I hope that everyone here knows how to do that. Okay, great, excellent. So creating that small breakout rooms is really, really helpful, especially when you're working with students who learn similarly. And again, we'll move to that soon. And having brain breaks. So some teachers are just like, oh my gosh, everyone's focusing, everyone's listening, I'm gonna just keep going. I'm just gonna keep all the subjects that I wanted to discuss, I'm gonna discuss it. But creating those brain breaks and having a pattern for it is really important. Again, it's preemptive, so sometimes your students might all be wonderful, but we do it anyway because we know that later on we'll appreciate that we did it. So we're gonna keep that schedule going, and less is more, for sure.
Leah, can you give an example of a brain break? What you mean by that?
We'll talk about brain breaks soon. Yeah, this is all just of course, we're going to document things, assess your classroom, and modify, especially in the beginning of the year when you don't know all your students. We're definitely going to be documenting things that are going on if you notice certain things with students, and then modify what we need to modify. So I'm going to just go a little faster because we have so much more to go, and I don't want to waste your time. Okay, but this is obviously the most important. Aside for everything else in the world, we are building midas, we're building characters. And so of course we're starting with our heart, and we're understanding that everyone is very anxious and there's a lot of unknown. So we want to just keep that love and flexibility going. If a child is having a hard day and you sense it, it's okay to tell them, you know what, you're good. You did a great job and now you're good. You can go have lunch or go outside. Definitely to have that sense. And I know all of you have that. So, and of course that mental health check again with children and parents to keep checking on them, is it's definitely, the reason why I keep bringing it up is because the past few months with Friendship Circle, and I know Jewish Family Services have been going with that as well, but there's been a lot of mental health situations that have been going on. So you as parents, you're in their homes, you have a window into people's homes. So that's really important to just to check in on that. And that's, obviously it's going like that for the whole world. And so as educators, it's kind of like, again, we're that partner, we're doing that partnership. So be ready to switch it up when you need to. We're definitely learning flexibility. If we haven't learned anything from COVID, it's definitely flexibility and patience. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sensory learners. Of course, no two students are alike, and therefore it's hard to to give exact instruction, but we can definitely, I can give you an overall, and then you can see what works for you. So sometimes you can analyze your students. You could also give them a quiz if they'd like. It's a fun thing to do. There's so many quizzes online that you could do, and I could send you some links as well. But really analyzing your students, you'll see how the students are and what type of learners they are. In the beginning of the school year, it's important to mix it up and modify. Okay, so in the beginning, we're going to do all different types of learning styles. Once you get to know your students better, you can modify the route that you're teaching and focus like, okay, these kids are audio learners. We're going to put them in a breakout room and do an activity that's more for audio learners, and then this is much more kinesthetic students, so we're going to do that. So it's easier to plan, of course, when you know your students. So over here, we're just going to keep mixing it up. All right. Okay, so for visual sensory strategies, so these are students that either that they have sensory, this is two parts, they either have sensory dysfunction in their visual senses. So for example, they get distracted very easily. We're talking about, let's say, kids with ADHD or kids who get distracted very easily, kids who have autism, a lot of the students that we spoke about. So will get distracted. So again, we want to clear their desktop. We want to create a clear learning environment. We want to ensure that the learning area is bright, that they're away from bright and distracting windows. If any of you are visual learners right here, you probably just saw the two sentences that were in color. Use bold, bright, colorful materials, and green screens. That was probably what you saw, because visual learners are looking at pictures and looking at charts and scales, right? We're not really looking at words so much. So we definitely want to do a lot of visuals, especially with virtual technology, right? This is all visual. But we definitely want to keep in mind that the students who are seeing pictures and not words. There's a whole now movement with green screens that I was discussing with Sippy before. The green screens are in the back of, well, right now everyone has virtual backgrounds on Zoom, but green screens add that another dimension, and that's really great for visual learners. I'm going to show you something really quick. Let's see. Okay, so right now I have a green screen. So I'm going to take this off for a second. I have a green screen behind me now, okay? The green screen also has a pocket, a screen, and you could all see what I have, right? You see my virtual backgrounds? You see what I'm doing? Okay, so for example, I'm learning about Rosh Hashanah. So we have a basket here, and remember that pocket that we have over here. So for example, I'll talk about items that we have to put in our Rosh Hashanah basket. And I have an apple. Does apple belong in the Rosh Hashanah basket? Yes. Okay. So great.
On my
basket.
On my screen, I see auditory sensory strategies.
Oh, you moved. Okay. Sorry. 1 second.
Maybe stop sharing the screen for a minute, Rochel, so that they can see.
No, but you have to see that how I'm sharing it. No, or no. I want to
stop
show you
sharing
the green screen. Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Now we can see the green screen.
Okay, fine. So now we have.
Look at that.
What about a car?
That's so cute.
Oh, the car belong in the Rosh Hashanah basket? No, right? Oh, it doesn't belong in there. What about a chauffeur? Does a chauffeur belong in the Rosh Hashanah basket? Wonderful. Okay, so this is like the really easy part. Okay, now if we would want to do something a little more complicated, and again, there's teachers that are doing crazy things, but for example, we can do, I'm gonna take off this. Take these off, but let's say we're learning the alphabet, and I'm gonna do something very cool. Are you ready? So now I'm looking for my alphabet, and I don't know. I'm looking for the letter that makes a B sound. Anybody see it? Anybody see? Oh, there it is. How cool is that? Okay, wonderful. Let's see if we can find a letter that starts with Linda's name. Anyone see a letter that starts with Linda's name?
How do you do that?
How are you doing that?
And it's really, really easy. And now the pocket, over there's a pocket. So I'm gonna move back. I'll show you how I'm doing it. That's why I wanted to share the screen, so I could show you what I'm doing. But for example, let's say I have a honey beer. 1 second. Go back here. I have a honey beer, and my beer wants to dip some yum. What should it dip in the honey for Rosh Hashanah? What are we dipping inside? okay, I'm just gonna do this really quick because I know it's late, but let's say we were gonna talk about apples and honey, and then we're gonna dip the apple in the honey. With the pocket, you could do that. Or you could just have the beer eat the apple and then it's gone, the apple's gone. But meanwhile, it's all a virtual screen. So it's very cool and it's very easy, extremely easy. So I'm gonna go back to, let's go back to this virtual. Okay, so the way the green screen, I'm gonna take off the green screen just for a minute. So you see this is the green screen, right? The way I did that with the magnifying glass is I have a magnifying glass that's a different color, that's blue. And I actually tried it with yellow, but it made my face disappear also. Like with the light, my face might look yellow. Anyway, it's very, very simple. I'm gonna share the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna share the screen, okay? Does everyone see me? Wait, sorry. Does everyone see the Zoom?
We
Linda,
see,
you don't see it?
no, we see you and we see an iCloud list you have.
Oh no.
Not what you want to show us, I don't think.
Okay. So then I don't know how to stop share. Okay. I did this before and it was fine.
What are you trying to do?
Screen share.
Yeah, if you want to share the screen.
This is could you guys see now?
No, what we're seeing your list again. We're seeing whatever you had open on your desktop.
Okay, fine. So then let's just stop for now. I can show it to you. I'll show it to you, try to use my words and try to teach it to you. When you're clicking choose virtual background, when you're clicking that, it says manually pick the color of the background. You're gonna pick blue instead of green, and then it just right here shows the background.
Got it.
And it could be any picture. So for learning multiples of 9, we can look for a number. So that part is very, very cool. Again, this is really cool. If you take a green blanket and cover yourself, you could be floating. If you put a green box and you stand on top of it, you're like flying in the air. It's very, very cool. And it's definitely it definitely attracts students and makes students excited about the lesson. So we said with that pattern of lessons, so we want to attract the students, and with a computer it's very hard to do that. So over here with these you can make it really fun. There's amazing Facebook groups that have all this different types of material for green screens. There's Facebook groups and there's YouTube videos. It's very simple, but also it adds so much to your lesson. You can make lessons with it. But that part is very, very cool. Okay, we're gonna go back to, I'm gonna take that away. Okay, so moving on now I'm scared to share the screen again.
So you want to go back to your PowerPoint now.
Okay, now we're good. Everyone see the PowerPoint? Okay, but again, we want to create bright, exciting visuals for our students who are visual learners, because that's what will draw them, what will attract them. Okay, our sensory breaks, we can make different activities, different visual breaks with them. So if you need to make calm down jars, I'm sure you've seen those, or lava lamps and stuff like that for them to look at during their calm time, that's great. And again, we'll talk about sending materials home. Auditory sensory strategies. So these are for children who are much more auditory learners, but also they might have auditory sensory disorders as well. So we're going to, we all are sensory in one way or another, right? The scratching of the board, it just, so imagine if we had that all the time. So we want to create a calming environment, calming music during quiet work. When they're doing their work, you can play some calming music. If you have a breakout room, that's even better, is that some students get distracted from the music. So again, we keep checking it, we're mixing it up, and then we're modifying. So we're documenting and assessing in the beginning of the school year. But these things definitely help. Learning things through music and singing games are wonderful for auditory learners. Having students tell you a story and you can write it down if they're not good at writing and they're not good at typing, but they love to speak and they love to sing, you can be that person who writes it for them and they can be speaking. Again, these students who are auditory learners, they love to talk and sing and hear stories. With instruction time, definitely allow wait time for their to process it. Some kids are they're a little bit slower in processing information, but they're that type of learner. So we're going to, again, there's a lot of talking with this. If you're not a visual learner, if you're not an auditory learner, you probably don't appreciate any of these things, right? Because for you, you're more attracted to something else. But if you are musical and you enjoy songs and rhymes, then this is wonderful for you. Those type of students probably would really flourish with this sort of instruction. Okay, I hope you don't mind the memes. They add humor to our craziness. But yes, again, auditory learners learn much better by hearing and not writing. Okay, this is the part where it gets tricky. Kinesthetic learners they learn with their bodies and with movement. But not just that. And one step forward is that every child, when we're moving, we're creating more oxygen, right? The oxygen is going into our brain, creating more brain cells, and actually waking us up, and it also being able to process information better. So the more we move, the more we're able to learn. Okay, so the ways of sitting in your classroom, sitting on the desk and learning, I know those are long gone, but it's really hard to do that, right, by a computer. So we want to create that the classroom becomes the room that they're working in becomes their classroom. So now we said that the space that they are learning, that a student is learning in, just like we set up ourselves with a clean desktop and clear everything out and not be distracted by windows, but we also want to make sure that their house can become their classroom. So number one is signing during class. There are some students that, let's say they're proud of their work. I love signing. I think signing is great because they're not talking, so it's not like major distraction, but they're being like hooray or thumbs up or thumbs down, moving their body, because they're also communicating with you, but they're also moving, right? We want them to move but not get distracted. So we have squishing and squeezing Play-Doh or putty, creating letters and numbers with clay. We want to do sensory breaks to pull. There's this like rope that you can get. It's really easy that it's like for pulling and for movement. Sometimes we put that on the bottom of the desk and the students are able, they're place resistant bands around the legs for the desk and have the kids bounce their feet on it. There's also really good sensory cushions, which we actually have at Friendship Circle, and I'm happy to lend them out. We're not using them now, but they are really good for a student who needs to move but wants to stay in his chair. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's really helpful for movement. So they're sitting, but they feel like they're moving a little bit. I'm moving also in that aspect. With sensory breaks, we're going to want to take a break, but those breaks don't have to be not learning. Those breaks could just be a different activity, right? A different environment. So the way to do that again is we're going to be moving but learning. So for example, dancing with music, this child, the picture that you see with the child and the plates on the floor, these pictures are from real students, parents who sent me pictures of different ways that their teachers engage them well. Over here, the teachers, the parents use plates, but sometimes teachers send home spots, and we'll talk about sending home stuff, but sending home spots and circles, and they're able to add whatever on the spot. So for example, if we're learning the alphabet, there'll be different alphabet on the circles. You can put pictures on the circles and have them move and jump from spot to spot. Exercise is important. We could take a break and do exercise. And again, while we're doing exercise, we're also learning. And we do this, you guys do this in school. So let's say you want to learn Hebrew and you're learning body parts. I'm sure that all of you have done this, doing dancing songs with Hebrew words, pointing to different body parts. We could do the same thing in our homes. It doesn't have to change. Everyone gets up and does the movement. And it's really great for that. The kids need it. They need to move, and they're also learning at the same time. Yes.
There was a question about if you had ideas for sensory breaks for older kids, for middle and high school.
Okay, sure. We'll get to that. I'll finish this part and then we'll talk about high school kids. Thank you. Okay, so water spray bottles, those are great if you can send those home, and we'll talk about sending things home, but they're really great for, you fill them up with water. We have pictures on the wall. They can shoot the pictures that we're talking about. If you see a letter that makes a book sound, spray it, stuff like that. Or if you see multiples of 40, spray it, stuff like that. It's works for everything, and it just definitely, again, they're moving. They have to do eye-hand coordination. Those type of things are really, really helpful. Wall push-ups, chair dips, all of those things are really helpful to get them moving, but also learning. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be both, right? We know this, we learn from our environment. Okay, squeezing balloons filled with Play-Doh, dry rice, dry beans, animal walk, that's more for younger kids. Tossing and catching heavy bean bags, ripping paper is very therapeutic. Making challah dough, really therapeutic, right? Blowing balloons, blowing bubbles, putting pillows on the couch, from the couch, putting it on the floor. The floor is lava, but learning styles that go with that, right? So like, for example, let's count to 3 in Hebrew and then jump from one pillow to another, right? So we're learning, but we're also, we're learning and we're doing an activity at the same time. Scavenger hunts are amazing. Sorry, everyone, 1 second. Sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Okay, you can have whatever you want right now. Okay. All right, I'm gonna come out in a few minutes. Okay, I'll come out in a few minutes. Okay, so parents giving everything they want to their child. Okay, so baking and science experiments and scavenger hunts are amazing. We go outside and looking for different things. You give them a list of stuff, go outside, stay in your home, look for these items. Again, we're gonna make our home into our classroom, and that is fantastic. Okay, with high school students, that's a really, thank you for bringing that up. There's actually, in Nicolay, they have this. It's probably, I don't know how many other high schools have this, but they have a room called the sensory room. And it's a calming room for students who are having a hard time. They are allowed to go to the sensory room once every 2 weeks. So if they go more than that, then the social worker probably wants to come and see what's going on. Is everything okay? They have this now, and the students go there and they have calm lights, like dim lighting and calm music, and they have a lot of fidgets, and the kids relax and they play with stuff, like just, again, a lot of fidgets. That we can create that in a home as well. It doesn't have to be just in the classroom, right? So talking to parents is very important. The parent being a partner and saying, okay, we need to create a calming environment for your son or your daughter. Activities like movement, exercise is also really helpful, especially for high school kids. Moving their bodies is very important. Probably a child who's having a hard time is also staying in bed a lot, maybe going through depression, maybe not, but they have that a lot of like lack of movement and feeling very lethargic. So definitely getting them out there and moving is very important for high school age. Also, art is really, really helpful. Creating something is really helpful. It really depends on your student. If you know your child, and maybe we can talk about this after the class, but there's a lot of different ways of building things and creating things. High school kids definitely feel good when they're building something. It also makes their brain turn off from learning and the stresses of learning, and they're just focusing on what they're doing, creating something. So between exercise, movement, and also creating stuff, whether it's art or woodwork or building something, it could definitely help for high school kids. I have a lot of different, so when we do friends at home, and when we do friends at home for high school kids, we have a lot of different type of sensory stuff that we do with them. I'm happy to share that with you after the class if you'd like. It's for sure it's different, but it's also not different. Like we think, oh, they're in high school, so they're older. They need the same stimulation. They do. It just, again, on an older level, but they need the same stimulation. So if they're kinesthetic learners, and they're learning things, again, creating stuff is also very important. A science experiment, making them create science planets, those things like making stuff with their hands is really important. So we'll go on to that. Okay. All right, moving on. Oral sensory strategies. This is more, again, this is not a learning style, but a lot of students have, they'll be licking things. And I don't know if you've had that, but licking the screen, licking their fingers. And I don't know if you've had that, but there was a lot of comments from teachers saying, I don't know what to do in this aspect of children like touching their fingers and biting themselves, or because they don't have a pencil, or they're just on the computer, there's nothing to touch. So having fidgets or having things that are chewy and crunchy are very helpful. And of course, drinking water. A lot of times they need to bite stuff to stay awake for whatever reason, whatever they're struggling with. So again, keeping them awake. And when you move, you're waking everybody up. So those are it's a combination of helping them with their sensory struggles and also attracting them to the lesson by doing these type of classes, by doing this route of teaching.
Leah,
High-tech,
we've got about 3 minutes left.
okay.
So maybe think about what the most important points are that you've got.
Okay. All right, fine. So let's I'll speed up a little bit. High tech and low tech choice board. We definitely want to give our students choices. Some of our students don't have good Wi-Fi and they don't have good internet, or they don't have good computers. So we definitely want to give the options of having low tech stuff. When I say low tech, sometimes I mean just actual physical things that they can do instead of doing all those things online. Kids love to do those things online. Those are really great, but for anybody who doesn't, it's great to have choices. Okay, so sending home stuff is very helpful. I'd recommend to send things home every other week. Every week is wonderful. It's a lot for teachers to pack up stuff every week. So if you have stuff that you could do, you could also send things home once a month as well. I mean, anything you send home is wonderful. Whatever you could do is amazing. I do want to make a little point that we used to send home stuff that were very detailed and complicated, and parents would just be like, what is this? I don't know how to work it. I'm not dealing with this. And they would for example, we measured, baking soda, 1 teaspoon, and we measured flour. And there was a lot of parents just were like, this is too much for me. I much prefer a paintbrush and paint. So it was just interesting to see the different, to see that and to realize that parents they definitely need supplies. But there's a lot of things they don't have in their homes because they're not teachers. So us as teachers, we might have those things, they might not. So to send home little stuff like that in the beginning would be wonderful. Play-Doh, marker boards, large dice, because there's a lot of games that you can play with those items, right? We said the spots, the spray bottles, balls. There's so many things you could do with these items, and we want to make sure they have them. So either you can give them a list, these are the things we'd like you to have, but a lot of times they won't have that stuff. So to be able to send them home a package is very helpful. And also sometimes to add something for the parents also is a very nice touch. Okay, apps you can use online. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to please implore you to watch Yael Gal's, she gave a class on virtual, on all the different virtual stuff that there are out there. They're amazing. Actually, this slide, everything is linked to the actual website. So when I share it with you, Sippy, everyone could click on them. All of them are linked. So Padlet, you can go on padlet.com. It's an amazing way of interacting with your students. A lot of these are great ways of interacting with your students, and you can watch Yael Gal's, or you can go on YouTube and watch tutorials. There's so many of them, and it's really great to get to know them. Don't be overwhelmed and try to do them all at the same time. It's crazy. It's really a lot. Try to get to know 1 or 2, learn them well, and then move on and do a little bit more. Okay, these are just great websites. Again, really great ways of, when I was saying before about websites and how to know. Brain breaks are up here if you want to have, there's really good brain breaks right here. On the second one, this is our website if you have any questions, but the rest of them is websites that are great for teaching with brain breaks and different ideas. Again, in conclusion, virtual teaching is tough, but so are you, and you got this. It's going to be an amazing year this year. I want to tell you, this year we're all on the brink of something amazing. Like the whole virtual reality it's phenomenal. And when we make a plan, we'll feel so much better. If you need to make a plan for the next month, just make a plan for the next month. If you feel more comfortable, because then you'll know what's going on more, then do that. Do what works for you, but definitely planning in advance is so wonderful. Speaking to parents, communicating with them, letting them know that it's going to be a phenomenal year. It will make them all feel so much more calm and that their child is in good hands. Again, I wish I can go on and on, but I know I'm like over, Cynthia's like out, done. Okay, so I'm going to be done. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Do we have a couple, does anybody have a question? If you need to go, we understand, but does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Sippy, are you going to have some of those resources sent to us on our email so we can?
Yep, Leah will send it to me and I will send it to you along with the evaluation and the assignment.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Okay, just guys, you're all phenomenal teachers. It will be a wonderful year. Yes, I'm glad that you're having a class in November, because it's really good to help. That's really helpful. But really just go online, check on those tutorials, because that you'll see so much. You'll understand it all. If you have any questions, I'm here and I'd love to help. Anything, please let me know, and have fun. And if you have really cool green screen activities, then send them to us. It'll be cool to see.
Leah, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and you sharing
Thank you.
your knowledge with
Thank you.
us. And
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Good luck with everything. It'll be a great year. Thank you, everyone.
thanks,
Take care.
Leah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.